Okay. Hi, everybody. This is Coffee Talk, Immigration Coffee Talk by GM. I'm Patsy Gannon, and I have quite a stellar team of panelists, as always. You know, Coffee Talk is kind of our informal way of bringing immigration news to you. We started doing this, Marcella and I, during our former president's administration, because there was so much happening in US immigration. It just seemed like a quicker way to deliver the messages. Our upcoming seminars are about like baseball players and O's and P's and strikes. And, you know, we're gonna have one on the financial taxes and being a foreign national. But this in particular, we wanted to do in the Ukraine because like most, like most people, I imagine, this crisis in Ukraine has been very unsettling for the world. It's something that we're deeply moved by and wanted to get some more information out there as we proceed. It is an unfortunate and tragic situation, and we're very lucky to have today Marcella, Irina, and Mikhail discussing some of the immigration things that are really hitting home and mattering to people in these countries. So we would like to continue. And I'm sorry, I just got a message. I just want to make sure my IT is okay. I hope you guys heard that. And so we really look forward to discussing some of the immigration. Now, everyone on this panel you can look up, and they are all stellar in their own way. They've all, every standard, every prize, everything you can possibly get in your field, they have. Every star that is given, they've received. So we don't want to spend our time with their background. You can look them up and you can be like, oh my God, I can't believe that he or she was on the panel. So I think we're going to start with US immigration a little bit and ask Marcella a few questions about some of the things that the US is doing in this regard.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is definitely a topic of a lot of interest, and it's the humanitarian component is one that I think for all of us is a very important one, and one we're hoping they can find solutions for, because we're dealing with people in their lives and their future. The situation in the US, you have to look at it from two perspectives. You're dealing with Ukrainian nationals. Are they in the US? Are they outside of the US? The US is not the only, obviously, point of entry. It's not the primary point of entry, as Mikhail will explain, Poland being its neighbor. But for a lot of family members, and a lot of calls we've received are from family members, very concerned family members or close friends and colleagues of helping people get out of Ukraine, or if they've already been able to cross the border into another territory, how to get them to the US. So one of the first initiatives, it's really one that serves people who are here, which is also a very limiting factor, maybe a little different from the way other countries are treating it. Under Biden's administration, they implemented TPS, temporary protected status, on March 1st. It was signed into law. Temporary protected status is usually given to specific countries when they're undergoing certain armed conflict or other humanitarian, environmental disasters, or other extraordinary circumstances. And when TPS is granted, it lets people remain in the United States without having fear of being deported or removed, and they can work. So it's usually given for 18 months. That's the first interval is 18 months.
Marcella, have we done that to other people, TPS?
Yep. We have TPS for a lot of other countries. We've had for El Salvador, for Haiti, and Syria. And you'll see during the Trump administration, you probably may have heard in the news of TPS. There was an attempt to cancel a lot of TPS, and then it was renewed. It wasn't going to be renewed. It was actually canceled. It was reinstated. And now that we have TPS for Ukraine, the big limiting factor, which is very different from what we've seen with other countries like Canada, is TPS only works, and it's the only ones who can benefit from TPS are people, or Ukrainian nationals who are here in the United States as of March 1st. If they were here March 1st, 2022, then they would be eligible. So that leaves out a big group of people who might make it to the US later and won't be eligible. Other countries have more of a rolling protected program where if they make it in, they can get some kind of a temporary stay where they get work authorization. The US also grants that. It's an 18-month period. You have to register during a very small window, a registration period. You still have to show that you are admissible, no criminal arrests, no felonies, no, you can't have 2 misdemeanors. So there's still a list of things you have to tick off boxes, but it's good for 18 months. It's usually extended. We've had TPS for certain countries for years and years and years, so people can remain in TPS for a very long time. It's at their discretion to extend it. But again, huge limiting factor is you have to have been here. So what do you do with the folks that are not here? And if they come here after March 1st, what are their options? So that brings us to the next one, how to get them here. So we've been going back and forth and we're fielding a lot of phone calls of how to get folks here. You have your typical B1, B2 visitor visa, which is the visa most people come in on to travel to the US. And that works if you already have the visa. But what if you do not have the visa? If you do not have the visa, you put yourself in a very difficult situation because one of the conditions of getting a tourist visa is you have to prove ties to your home country or that you will return. And yes, that might be, it's the foreseeable future, God willing, but it is still a standard you have to satisfy. So if you're a B1, B2, you have a visa, you can board it. If you don't have a passport, now you have to think about renewing it. If you have a visa that expired, now you're going into the provisions for extending it. Now, what happened on March 2nd, something else that happened on March 2nd that was announced in the US system is Ukraine was listed as, not stateless, but essentially it's a country where we can't process any visas. And when that happened, it was added to the list of homeless nationalities. And it really means there isn't a place where they can process. So the default post will be Warsaw, Poland, and Frankfurt. Frankfurt being the primary, although I think most folks are now coming in through Poland. But Frankfurt is the default for a lot of people who are looking for immigrant visas. So all your immigrant visas, which are your folks who are looking to get green cards because they've been sponsored for family or employment, any of those criteria or diversity visa, or including fiance, also very important. We've gotten some calls about that as well. If there's fiancés, your default post is Frankfurt, and you can transfer over to Warsaw. So we're dealing with those 2 posts in terms of transferring applicants.
Marcella, if you could find any US consulate, I mean, the timelines are longer, but there are countries that are visa for your tourist visas.
Yep.
For you. Good try.
Yep. So once you get into the list of homeless nationalities, your immigrant visa process, there's a default post. They define the post for you. If it's a non-immigrant category, which is your tourist visas, your Ls, your H's, your E's, all of those, that you're third country processing at any post that will receive you because you don't have a post, you don't have a home post. So you should be able to go to any post, but you have to contact them. With COVID, we had a huge backlog. With the Ukraine situation, it's going to get bigger, and not all posts will welcome third country nationals. So they are releasing, the US consulate's website in Poland is an excellent resource. It is giving you information about which borders you can cross, land borders, which ones are the busiest, some saying up to, I don't know, Nicole can probably help us there, about 30 hours to cross. And they're probably deviating. You say if it's taking too long at that through Poland, go through Slovakia, which I think is one of the ones that is not as busy right now, but it might change. So that website, the US consulate's website in Poland, a big source of information for what people on the ground can do to get out of Poland if they have to cross the land, they have to do land crossing because they can't fly.
Macau, I'm going to Poland just for a second. Marcel kind of introduced us over into Warsaw. How is it going on the ground there, and what are you seeing? I mean, honestly, what we see in the US in terms of humanitarian support from everybody in the world, but also from the Polish people is pretty amazing. But what is going on over there?
Yeah, thanks for that. Thank you for having me here, and hello from Warsaw. Well, yes, it's pretty amazing, and I must say that there is a huge response of the Polish persons towards the the crisis, the war. Up until now, for the last 10 days, more than 1 million Ukrainians crossed the Polish border. So you can see what the number is, and many people, a big amount of these persons, stayed in Poland. Some of them obviously went further to Germany and further countries, Czech Republic. but majority is still in Poland. And to give you an example, there are 38 million of Polish persons in Poland. So the number is really huge. Obviously, the crisis concerns us from the personal perspective, but also from the professional perspective. As for the lawyers dealing with employment and immigration, there is a huge community of Ukrainians in Poland already. Approximately 1.5 million persons were living in Poland. And obviously we have many friends in Ukraine and from Ukraine. That's why it is also a personal issue. Many families in Poland offered shelter to the persons crossing the border these days. Many of my friends accepted entire families and offered them place at their home. So this is truly amazing. And people all quite often ask me, or clients, where I think that the war will end up soon. I don't think so, because Ukrainians are fighting for two important things, which is dignity and right to self-determination is probably the most important thing. And that's why if somebody wants to take out of this of you, it means that you not stop fighting. So we all have to be ready as the international community dealing with immigration. We have to be ready that the conflict will last long. From the professional and legal perspective, persons who are entering Poland do not get automatically international protection status. So the persons who enter, they will fall under special law that is now in the parliament and probably will enter into force next week. And this act will give them 18 months of stay in Poland, unconditional, plus 18 months of free access to the labor market, unconditional without the work permit. On top of that, the government will offer financial aids plus family aids that the families coming here will be able to use. And everybody will be also covered by the health insurance. So this is I think is a good offer for them to stay here for a while and have this, use this protection that the government is offering. But obviously, it will be also important to, we really think that, we expect that the international community will always present the offer or introduce special programs for them. So many people will be able to, to move further and possibly also come to US.
So they, Irina, how is it on the ground, would you say, in Chicago, New York, when it comes to what is happening in those communities?
I think people are just really distressed about how fast this happened and what happened. Chicago, where I'm seated, actually, I think has the biggest population of people from Poland outside of Poland. And I think likewise for the Ukraine. So those two communities are super prominent here, and there's very friendly relations, at least in this city. As someone who was born there, I still have distant relatives, and we have family friends who still have close relatives there. There's even situations where a father lives in Russia and the child lives in Ukraine, right? Even within those cross-border situations. So this is a massive geopolitical conflict that I think the Ukrainians would like to see certain moves from NATO that are just unlikely to happen. But from a humanitarian standpoint, everyone here is doing one of three things, I think, which is trying to send funds over there in a way where it's not going to get corrupted, or in a way where they could feel secure that those funds will reach folks who really need them. And that's difficult because the Ukrainian currency has just been so devalued that once these folks cross borders, they really don't have a lot of resources. Two, trying to send aid there. And I actually have a list of things that someone sent me that go out on these massive pallets to Poland. And just to read a couple of them off, we're talking about light military gear, like vision goggles, thermal first aid kits, body armor, medicine, surgical supplies. And all of these things Americans can purchase from Amazon, which I found stunning, or various shops, and just ship them through. So hopefully they make it there. Medical kits are super important, and then clothing, food, and all these go to these warehouses in Poland and get processed. So one, for the folks who are able to cross the border, and two, for maybe being able to even get those supplies into the Ukraine. And the last thing is, I talked to someone yesterday who made it to Poland. It was a 15-hour drive from wherever they were, kind of near the Kiev region, and then another 15 hours to be processed. And now she and her family have made it to Poland. So I think that's really the main sort of thoroughfare to try to get out of the Ukraine.
They have, just as a different, not the same topic you're talking about with Russia. I mean, what, Marcel, are we doing with the US and Russia? And what does Poland do? And we see a lot of Russians, very brave people who are trying to also cross and get out of Russia. Marcel, what
Yeah, on the US side, with the immigration services for folks who are in Russia processing visas, all of that has been suspended. Ironically, as well, immigrant visas are also being referred to Warsaw. So you have a situation, okay, you have someone in Russia needs to process immigrant visa. How do they get to Poland to process in Warsaw? So you have this really difficult movement issue. It's not even so much where can I process, how am I going to get there? There was a story about a little kid who traveled, I don't know, 11 years old, was 600 miles from Ukraine to the borders on his own. So walking. So it's difficult. So you might have a post, but there isn't a solution. And then there's a time lag as well. What's the availability for appointments? So once you get there, you're still waiting for months before you can get an appointment. You can request emergency appointments. That is available, but they're not easy to come by right now.
Well, look, how is it going to, like, let's say I protested, I want to leave Russia. I also am not in agreement. I go into Poland. I mean, Ukrainians don't need a visa. What about the Russian people?
So Russian people need a visa to enter both Poland and Schengen. This is the issue what Marcela said, like US embassy is processing through Warsaw, but the problem is that like every Russian needs a visa to enter, and the Poland now suspended issuing visa to Russian citizens. So it's like, it's like bridge with no return. We allow persons from Russia to enter Poland and Schengen, but you need a visa prior. So if you're unlucky and you don't have a visa yet, then you will not enter. Plus, there is also a problem when it comes to transportation, because all the flights between Russia and Poland are suspended. So there are like lots of practicalities behind. But now discussion in Poland is going this way. Like, obviously, you can stop Russians from entering Poland and Schengen. But probably more painful for the Russian government is to allow all the talented Russians to enter and leave Russia. So, the problem has two dimensions.
Yeah, that is pretty scary, because I think the other day we were discussing maybe possibly a brain drain coming right out of Russia and what's left there when all this is said and done. Because people know, the other ones that are left are, I don't know, just.
And that happened after the fall of the Soviet Union. They experienced a massive brain drain. And I think that's still had an impact in the country.
Marcel, what other, I know that this is supposed to be a very fast coffee talk, brain drain, but I just want to make sure we hit a few points. What other things, different people are caught in different immigration worlds. I mean, so some people didn't have documents. Like in the United States, there's a lot of people who don't have passports. If this were to happen in certain states, I can guarantee you, and everyone would be like, what? I don't have a passport. Or, caught in different points of their life, getting on an airplane. Now they're not able to fly into Poland. What's the best they can do if they want to make to the US? So
they have other things that are not necessarily very easy to come by, but a lot of people are asking about the humanitarian parole program. The U.S. offers humanitarian parole, which gives you permission to board and enter the U.S. But it's a case-by-case analysis, and it's issued in very individualized, limited purpose. But the issue here is that it's not a one-person situation; it's a massive migration. It's everyone leaving. Mikhail said, in the New York Times, I think they said they were already at 2 million that have already left, or by the end of the weekend, 2 million will have left, that leaves still a lot of people. So the humanitarian parole is a very case-by-case basis. There's no guarantees. Might you have better luck getting a B1, B2 visa and letting the officers have a little more discretion and leeway. The issue with the tourist visa is you have to prove your ability or your intent to return. If you have
evidence to that,
Sorry?
you evidence that you've left your family, your male.
Yeah, that you're right, because males 18 or what is it, 18 to 60 can't leave. So if you show that everything you had before you left and your family's still there, you have company letters. If you have U.S. citizen relatives in the U.S., you might be better off than if you didn't have any relatives. Ironically, that's not usually the case with B1, B2s, but people are the suggestions bring letters from relatives, something to show what is going to lead you to come back to the Ukraine when the situation hopefully is done soon. But we don't think it's soon.
And Mikhail, what would you say for Poland right now? What would be, as Ukrainians enter in there, as people are looking for their families, what is some of the best things we can do for that situation?
Well, this is quite important aspect that Marcela mentioned, that many people don't have the right documents. We estimate that approximately 15% of persons that entered Poland, so 150,000, don't have documents that would be normally required, so they don't have passports. Or we allow persons to enter using the state ID, or we allow like kids with no personal documents, obviously. So the best probably advice would be to contact your family and relatives in different countries if they're able to help you to sort it out, like join them. If not, Poland is preparing this special act that will regulate your status even though you entered without documents. Because normally what would happen is that if you don't have a document, you go to the embassy of your own country and the passport, at least temporary passport, is being given to you, right? But in this case, obviously the Ukrainian consulates, there are a few in Poland, they will not be able to handle all the cases. So the persons who don't have any documents, they probably have to stay in Poland because they cannot travel as long as your country will not allow them on special conditions.
Has there been discussion already in Poland with regards to resettling, or is that, I mean, it's just in the beginning, and in the US, it would take years, but a concept of resettling your Ukrainian nationals who are coming in?
I think it's too early. There's no discussion yet. No. We still concentrate on the help and like border crossing because there's like still massive number of persons coming, and this support is truly amazing. But in fact, there is nothing like a big plan for how to sort out this situation in the future. I think we could expect this, basing on the numbers that will stay in Poland. Obviously, not everybody is staying.
Yeah, I was looking for the last time we had something like this where we had a special program, which was Haiti. It was for 2010 for the earthquake. It took 4 years before a special program rolled out from the US. But that was an economic situation. So this is military operation. We'll see.
Yeah.
Irina, is there something in particular that you wanted to address before we ask of, wrap it up and with some questions and things like that?
No, I think questions are important, and we don't have a lot of time left, so let's try to see some of these questions and help folks out.
Yeah.
Marcel, can you see those?
Yeah, I'm trying to see. There's some questions that popped up. I would have, okay. How could an UA citizen prove in the USA that they have family relatives back in the UA if they had to flee and was not able to collect more than just their passports? Would an affidavit suffice?
And I definitely think that might be a friend of ours who's asking it. I think it might be from a friend of Mikhail. Yeah, affidavits is all you got. I mean, they do the U.S. I didn't mean to answer myself. The U.S. consulate officer, it's at their discretion. There's no appeal to their decision. So any evidence that you can prove would be nice. Anything that you have, you can get an affidavit. Of course, that carries weight. Photos of your anything. People knew you have to flee. They do understand that concept.
And then here, my in-laws are currently stuck in Kharkiv. My wife has a green card. I'm a US citizen. Is there any kind of legislation that is currently being introduced or any kind of special programs are available to relocate? So if you are, well, these are in-laws, so it's going to be parents, but if there are something that's very interesting that did come up, if you have immediate relatives and you're a US citizen, you could request that the post let you process in country. Usually when you're doing a family-based process for immediate relatives, it has to start in the US, which is months, a year to get approved. Then you go to a national visa center and then it goes to the consulate for the interview. They are allowing certain case-by-case basis, you make a request to the post. I have an immediate relative petition. Can I file in country? Assuming, of course, the foreign nationals they are at the post or in the location, can I file in country for them? And they might make an exception, which will speed up the process, the family-based process. So they are making some exceptions. Again, the US consulate website for Poland has a lot of information and links about how to get scheduled at different posts, and breaks it down by situations. If it's a fiance, fiance, you're kind of stuck because you need to be approved first from USCIS. But if you're immediate relatives and you have either a family-based petition that's pending, approved, or not even filed, there are possible solutions. It might take some time and a lot of begging and a lot of requests and a lot of emergency and maybe congressional, but they are posting some options.
And we will say, at least in New York, and I imagine Chicago too, the senators, the congressional people, they're overwhelmed. They were overwhelmed with Afghanistan, just because I feel like we're on the heels of that and things are still moving very, I don't want to say very slowly because I know everyone's trying to do the best they can, but boy, sometimes I just wish we should be better at these policies. We should, at this point, just be so much better at it in the US because we do have practice. Let's put it that way. Mikhail, what words of advice can you say for those and for those on the out there who are participants and listening about what's happening in Poland? What's the best they can do with anything? Such a crazy time.
If you can reach out to relatives or your family members who are still in Ukraine, please advise them to leave and to come to Poland as soon as possible, as like the situation kind of may get out of control. So if only possible, this is my recommendation. And then obviously your immigration status will not be that obvious, but I guess there will be either legislation in Poland that will help to sort it out, or legislation of different countries. So if only possible, please recommend this to your relatives that are still in Ukraine.
And just as a follow-up question, Mikhail, if you had you were talking about the parliament, and that's very similar to our temporary protected status, as Marcelo was explaining to everyone. I just assume that this is going to pass, that this is not in jeopardy for these people, that everyone kind of feels good about it, right? I thought maybe I should ask you since you're here. I mean, do you think that will pass, the measures that they're doing in Parliament right now in Poland? Or
Yeah, for sure. For sure, because otherwise this person wouldn't have any status. So would be out of the law. So definitely, and as long as they follow what Marcela says, like it would be almost the same as US TPS. So definitely.
I've got a quick question, Mikhail. Is Poland getting help from other maybe like EU countries or NATO countries as they bear the brunt of this immigration burden?
Well, obviously from the NATO when it comes to military help, and this is what the NATO is for. So obviously we get a great support from the NATO countries, especially from US, who just appointed new ambassador to Poland. He arrived is Mark Brzezinski. He arrived just a few weeks before the conflict, so just right in time. When it comes to financial aid, we get lots of support from the EU countries, and there will be definitely funds to organize the life of Ukrainians here in Poland. Additional programs and support for the social aid and help and financial aid. So definitely yes, because Poland is just small to sort out by itself.
Guys, I know that we're over, but I really, really want to thank you guys for being for being here, for GM for supporting this, for just how we find ourselves. And I know just taking up your time and the participants who are here today. Thank you so much. If you have any follow-up questions, I mean, you've got these great, amazing, brilliant panelists who are here today, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions all the way from Poland. Macau, thank you so much for this. We've worked with him for many years. He's a star. What can I say? Thank you again.
Patricia.
So sorry about this situation, and you know, anything that we could do to help or spread the light, just let us know. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you for participating, Marcella, Irina. Thank you for all the
Thank
participants.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.